Great to have you with us, Shaun.
Yeah, it's good to be on the show again. Thank you.
All right, Shaun, I'm going to get right to it if we can. We just had on Jim Riley. He's an attorney, does campaign finance law, and also, I have to say, a competent investigative journalist. He's also the managing editor of Virginia Verticom, and he was basically saying that he did a lot of investigation on these anonymous attack ads on the lieutenant governor's race. A couple of them aimed at Prince William County delegate Scott Lingenfelter. Now they're being aimed at entrepreneur and conservative businessman Pete Snyder. And what Jim was telling us, he said that he had unequivocal evidence that these were done by one Lee Bond, who was a former employee of Prince William County, which is where Corey Stewart, another candidate for lieutenant governor, is the chairman of the supervisors, and that he was tying it back to the Stewart campaign. Now, on the headline of Bearing Drift today, or the political editor of Bearing Drift, your story, it says, Corey Stewart behind anti-Lingenfelter, anti-Snyder ads. That's a pretty emphatic headline. Shaun, what's up?
Well, here's what we got. This is a story that just absolutely refused to die. Obviously, Scott Lingenfelter was the initial target of a pretty brutal ad. It was a mail piece that went out, pretty much questioning his record. And then, shortly thereafter, same font, same cadence, same feel. These videos that were made that were, targeting Pete Snyder. Julian Walker with the Virginia Pilot had been bird dogging this for a while. He actually pointed back. There was an attorney that had been doing some Ron Paul stuff. There was an address that had been traced back that had been used by RGA and things of this nature, Republican Governors Association. So very carefully connecting the dots all the way through. And then we ended up getting, Jim Riley involved as well. And I think we kind of kicked this off. Obviously, Bearing Drift ended up writing something. It was an op-ed from Tito Munoz, who's a businessman himself in Prince William County, talking about a very separate incident up in Prince William County where the Prince William County Board of Supervisors had actually removed a number of individuals that were living in trailers that was in a floodplain. That they pretty much refused to upgrade a drainage pipe and used that as the excuse to evict a number of individuals from a piece of land that was actually pretty high demand real estate. At least that was the allegation from Tito Munoz. And then at that point in time, what happened is that the Stewart campaign really doubled down. I can tell you that BearingDrift.com received a number of phone calls from Stewart staffers, demanding that it be retracted. We refused to do that. And I think at that point in time, that's where you started seeing other individuals in Prince William County that had exception with Mr. Stewart start sort of offering information. And that information ended up in the lap of Mr. Riley over at Virginia Verticom. Virginia Verticom, of course, being the other titan or in the Virginia blogosphere next to Bearing Drift.
Yes.
So what you had at this point is that Jim Riley really had the goods at this point in time. He had been doing his own research. He lives in Prince William County, a very accomplished attorney, started stitching things together, and then he got the information as he posted on his website that the direct line to Corey Stewart's campaign is pretty much undeniable at this stage. And it's a backbreaker. It really is. This has been one of those open secrets in Virginia. Everybody's been everybody held the same contempt for these ads. Everybody was wondering who did it. And now we finally got a very, very tight connection between the Corey Stewart campaign and these, pretty nasty, despicable ads. It's really unfortunate.
Shaun, are you convinced beyond the shadow of a doubt, based on your research and analysis, that the Corey Stewart campaign is indeed behind these anonymous attack ads?
I think that the links are very strong, and it is very difficult for Corey Stewart to develop a different narrative at this point in time that would suggest otherwise. And look, I had actually had the opportunity to talk to Corey Stewart over the weekend. He had actually visited with me, and I asked him point blank. I said, is your campaign behind these ads? He gave me a very firm, unequivocal no. And then you go ahead and you see these connections, and you see the dots form up. I mean, there's always going to be some degree of distance when you have a third-party attack ad. But when you start seeing, certain individuals surrounding it, when you start seeing the dots connected, I think it's very, very difficult for Corey's third-party, efforts. And you've seen them online now. I mean, they're pointing back at Susan Stimson and saying that Susan Stimson's behind it. But there's just no evidence for that whatsoever. Every single finger right now, every single breadcrumb is truly pointing at the Corey Stewart campaign. And, if true, I think he needs to step up and own them. If false, he needs to demonstrate evidence that it's false. But right now, it's pretty darned evident, and Mr. Riley's convinced, I'm certain. I believe I'm convinced as well. I think that there's too many fingers, there's too many breadcrumbs that would suggest a different campaigns behind it. I think Corey Stewart's got some explaining to do here. I mean, these are truly very low ads, and the doubling down that you're seeing online just has not been consistent with an honorable campaign.
Well, Shaun, the Susan Stimson connection makes no sense. She didn't get the backers of the big Ron Paul people. She didn't get the backing of the Tea Party. Her campaign is now morphing into irrelevancy. She's not going to be the nominee. Maybe it was a last-ditch effort, but we certainly have no evidence of that. Now, here's my question. You met with Corey Stewart. You looked him eyeball to eyeball. Do you think he lied to you, Shaun? God, I hope not. I would really like to think that in Virginia politics, you can sit across the table, ask a straight question, get a straight answer. But I think at this point in time, I'll be honest with you, John, I do feel lied to at this point. I'm not so sure that. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the waving off and trying to throw it towards Susan Stimson, it just doesn't wash. The evidence isn't there for that. There's no connection there whatsoever. I think some of the attack lines that are being used against her right now are pretty despicable. But you got to go back to the question: who benefits when you start looking at these ads? Scott Lingenfelter, was rumored to have actually carried a plurality in Prince William County over Corey Stewart. The attack ad went out. When Corey Stewart, when Scott Lingenfelter gets hit, who benefits from something like that? A very obvious beneficiary is Corey Stewart. Right.
You have Pete Snyder riding tall in the saddle right now. He's widely perceived to be the front runner. When he gets hit with this, with the video ads, who benefits? Well, Corey Stewart's widely perceived to be the number 2 right now, so he comes down a little bit. And so you start looking at the breadcrumbs here as to exactly who's behind it. You start looking at the connections as the individuals that made these videos. There's a very direct connection to Corey Stewart there. The one thing that's really, that really stands out in all of this, I mean, obviously, you've got surrogates doing third-party stuff anyway, but this sort of activity, when it's not disclaimed and it's not disclosed, is illegal in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You have to stand by your ads. So in this instance, we've got a real problem here. I would not expect, expect today to be, a bit of a doubling down. You're probably going to hear statements from party officials. You're probably going to hear statements from some of the campaigns who have been victims of these attacks to ask the Attorney General's office to look into it, and rightly so, because this sort of activity just does not stand the test of what we expect in honorable campaigning in Virginia. That's a big problem, and, again, every single breadcrumb leads straight to Corey Stewart's door.
Well, it goes to courage and character. My position on negative ads, I don't care if you do negative ads, that's fine. You got the money, you can do them, they're legal. But have the courage, the moxie, the kahunas to put your name behind it. And it is what it is. Say who you are and have them done. This is the John Fredericks Show. We're with Shaun Kenney. He's the political editor of BearingDrift.com. You can read Shaun's post today entitled Breaking: Corey Stewart Behind Anti-Lingenfelter, Anti-Snyder Negative Campaign Ads. That's by Shaun Kenney. Just go to BearingDrift.com. Shaun, let me ask you this. Let's get to the Tea Party, their big endorsement Monday of Corey Stewart. Now, one thing that I know about the Tea Party in Virginia, they get on with me all the time. They say, hey, we are accountable. We're constitutionalists. We always do the right thing. We don't compromise, et cetera. Oh, okay, that's fine. But now, Shaun, you got to put your money where your mouth is. Talk is cheap. So here's my question. Based on this evidence, do you think the Tea Party should retract their endorsement of Corey Stewart?
You know, there's a big debate nationwide as to whether or not Tea parties ought to endorse in campaigns, whether or not they should just stick to principles and then sort of point the way, or whether or not they should actually get involved. I think this is a good example as to why Tea parties should not get involved directly in campaigns. And here's why. You know, when the candidate gets embroiled in some sort of scandal, perceived or otherwise, it tarnishes the reputation of the Tea Party. The real question is who steered the Virginia Tea Party Patriots, the Tea Party Patriots Federation, who steered them to endorse Corey Stewart at this point in time? You know, it's pretty clear that there's a lot of consternation over it. Everyone's complaining about the vetting process. Nobody's very much satisfied with how that went down. How did that happen? Who steered that process?
Well, Shaun, I mean that's politics. I mean they have a right. They have a right to their vetting process, and they can endorse anybody they please, and that's fine. And we certainly report it. But I want to get back to my question, which is, even though you don't think they should be endorsing candidates, they did, and they did it in a big way. Good for them. Now my question is, how can you stand there, beat your chest about Constitution and not compromising and principles, and then you got this evidence come out? Should they retract their endorsement or not?
Well, who steered them in that direction is the real question again. It's you know, I mean, should they retract their endorsement? Well, probably so. They need to look at their vetting process again. This is a real mess. We know that there was a very late midnight con call with the middle resolution folks about whether or not they should walk it back. But again, you know, the real question still remains: who leaned them in this direction to go ahead and make this endorsement, and why was the vetting process? You know, who had their thumb on the scale during the vetting process to make sure stuff like this wasn't fully vetted? Because it's not as if that this is something that wasn't being discussed. It's not like the rumor mill wasn't out. It's not like somebody in Prince William County's Tea Party couldn't have sorted this out for themselves. It was sort of glossed over. So my real question at this point in time is who urged this endorsement on, and again, you know, who benefits from that? I mean, there's some real questions with the Tea Party leadership right now if they don't walk this endorsement back. And I think there's a lot of individuals within the Virginia Tea Party that want to see that happen at this point in time because they simply can't afford to have their reputation tarnished with this kind of scandal.
Well, otherwise it's a black eye, and as I said earlier, you know, you got to walk the talk. Talk is cheap. I'm tired of talk. You want to go around saying we stand on principle, then you got to stand on it when things get tough and the heat turns up in the kitchen. Shaun, our phones are lighting up like a Christmas tree. If you can bear with us, we're going to go to Steve in Haymarket. Steve, how are you?
Yeah, I think this may be a little too fast. These are not breadcrumbs. They're 57 Buicks lined up. In other words, it's a little, you know, I'm a Republican. I like to call myself a stupid party, but this is just far too stupid. Basically, the top three candidates, either from the content of the attack ads or this you know, tying to Corey Stewart, who, by the way, changed the debate on illegal immigration for the entire country. Now, he voted for the tax increase in Prince William County, but it was a compromise. Even though all the politicians involved with that one know full well that there's no reason to raise taxes in Prince William County. They just did it. So I'm just going to wait. Let's get the rest of this. Let's follow the trail. Let's do a little bit of checkers work and stop playing checkers. Or I mean chess.
Steve,
Let's
thanks.
play chess, not checkers. Okay, there we go.
Thanks, Steve. Always appreciate it. So, Shaun, that was Steve saying he was trying to figure out why the Tea Party, back to your earlier point, backed Stewart in the first place, because a lot of people are saying, well, the first thing the Tea Party does, tax enough already, is rail against taxes. They certainly did against the transportation plan, and now, bang, they back a guy that's raised taxes a number of times. How does that make any sense?
Well, you know, I mean, obviously that charge sticks true. Corey Stewart, you know, has raised taxes in the past. Here's the thing, though, and this is something that's very difficult for folks to understand, at least in Virginia with local governments and local supervisors. They're really trapped by Richmond when it comes to a lot of what's happened at the local level. You know, all the fiscal pressures, all the state mandates, all the unfunded mandates. When the candidates kick down the road, you know, the feds kick it down to the states kick it down to localities. localities have no one to kick it down to. And so those fiscal pressures in a well-run county inevitably slowly build over the course of time. If you've got a lot of waste in your budget, if you've got a lot of fat in your budget, you can hold the line on taxes for a time until your debt spending gets high, until you start meeting the needs that you really have, and then all of a sudden those pressures start to continue to build. So, that's one of those things where if you truly step back, that's a real problem in Virginia government. And unfortunately, we're not getting an honest conversation, given that we have two county chairmen, really, for local boards of supervisors that could really engage in that sort of conversation. But it's a pretty deep conversation, and unfortunately, we have to settle for a checkers explanation rather than a chess one.
All right, Shaun, I got about a half a minute. Let's just bottom line this thing based on your analysis on Jim Riley's great work, by the way, in investigative journalism. Is this a game changer, and does it have the potential to bring down the Corey Stewart for Lieutenant Governor campaign in Virginia?
I think it is a game changer. I think Corey's got a lot of explaining to do. He can either offer evidence that there is no connection. He can pretty much disavow ever having used this guy. The voiceovers are pretty strong correlation. There's other evidence out there as well that there's some very, very strong connections. Or he can come out and man up and say, yeah, I was absolutely behind that, and here's the reason why. So, those are Corey's options at this point in time. Neither of them are palatable. This is pretty serious stuff. In Virginia, this is against the law. So if the Stewart campaign truly is behind it, that's a big news. And, hats off to the Virginia blogosphere for breaking it.
Okay, Shaun, we're going to keep following this story. We appreciate your great work on it. Shaun Kenney, he's the political editor of BearingDrift.com. This is